someone else coming too? I thought I
It
saw
just
another name.
does.
Okay. Okay. I thought I saw another
Uh,
name on the thingy.
Chris's wife is on the show too, Lindsay. You might
Oh,
hear her later, but
Yeah, she's coming right back this time. So
okay.
welcome to another episode of Video Store Rejects. This is a podcast where we discuss directors' filmographies and our favorite film franchises. I'm your host, Cody House. With me is my co host, Chris Jacobs. He's our social media content manager. Most of the posts come from him on our Facebook page.
hey everybody! Hope you're staying nice and cool today because it is sweltering hot. We are on a hell's doorstep here
As
behind the pine curtain.
as I'm drinking a hot beverage.
Yeah, hey, it's okay. It's okay. I had to go with the cool beverage soda. So
We
soda
have
and
a
water.
we have a returning guest who is a podcaster and a film writer. He has published work on lots of different types of movies, and he's here to discuss another deep dive from the year 2001. Brandon Stanwyck, welcome back, Brandon.
Hi. It's good to be back. I didn't even realize that both films I've been on this show talking about were 2001 until you mentioned it just now.
Yeah, and we're doing the Coen Brothers, and today we are possibly talking their most esoteric film, at least their most noir film, The
Mm-hmm.
Man Who Wasn't There. So before we get into the film, Brandon, are you a fan of the Coen Brothers?
Yeah, I am. Back when No Country for Old Men came out, I was in high school at the time, and that's when I decided to watch everything I could get my hands on of theirs. Basically, everything that the public library in my hometown had, I watched, and The Man Who Wasn't There was one of those. So this was my first time revisiting the film in maybe, I don't know, 14 years, however long ago No Country for Old Men was, give or take. So it was fun to revisit, watching it with fresh eyes.
For sure, because like there were parts of this I had forgotten. I hadn't seen this since I think my dad rented it, and it's got to be a good 20 years ago at least since I had seen
This
this movie.
yeah, this movie was a high. This movie came out the year I graduated, and I totally missed this movie. Now I remember because I used to go around to my local cinema and video stores and collect all the old movie posters that they would throw out. And I remember getting this movie poster, but I had no idea what it was. And when I went back to watch it, I was like, oh man, I vividly remember this poster because it was in black and white. And but I totally just missed it. Like I had not seen this movie. Um, but yeah, it's just I'm sorry, I'm just a little tangent.
Well, I think we had a little bit of a discussion before we did this one because we were doing a previous show. And I think this movie just kind of got lost in the shuffle with just the movies that came out that year, even in the independent film world, because this is the year of Memento and Amelie, which were kind of the critical darlings that year.
And Mulholland Drive would also be this year
Yep.
too.
Yep. And that's another well, I guess
It's
this is class.
noirish.
Yeah, it's noirish. So that was another. You're right. Mulholland Drive was another big critical movie of this year that people were talking about. It is kind of odd because this is right after like three of their most popular films that had come out. Well, Big Lebowski wasn't popular when it came out, but I think the cult status had already been
Mm-hmm.
established by this point. But why do you like this movie so much, Brandon?
So when I watched it way back when, I knew a lot less about film, being, in high school. I had started watching the classics and things like that and going through certain filmmakers' filmographies like Hitchcock and Billy Wilder and all that. And so when I decided to go through the Coens to do like a modern auteur streak, when I came to this one, it reminded me of a lot of the things that I had just recently seen. And I kind of grew up on Turner Classic Movies, having grown up partially in my grandparents' home. That was one of the channels that was just on. So when I was watching this for the
Right.
first time as like a, I don't know, 15-year old, 15, 16, it was a nice mix of modern and classic at the same time because it looked like those old movies, but it had an elegance and a
Mhm.
crispness to it that the other ones sort of lacked. I like the stylization of the old look with a sort of modern flair.
They are.
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to say they are very very good at translating those time periods over to screen. If you've seen Hudsucker and um, Hail Caesar and so on, some of their other their period piece movies, they do that really really well. And the fact that it is in black and white for a 2001 movie, it's pretty incredible. I mean, when you think about it.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the Hudsucker Proxy because that's kind of where they got the idea for this movie is with that barbershop scene. They were like seeing all the different hairstyles and haircuts that people had in that time period. And they're like, what if we
Right.
made a movie about a barber?
Those hairstyles really hit home because growing up, that's what my mom would be like, okay, take the boys to get a haircut. And the first thing he would say was, okay, flat top, because that's what my dad grew up having. He goes, well, I grew up with a flat top in the 50s and 60s. You know, it was good enough for me. It's good enough for my boys. So we would always come home with flat tops. And my mom would be like, David, come on. There are other hairstyles in these 50s, these 50s crew cuts and flat tops. But oh, I thought that was pretty funny.
And I think there's even a bit of nostalgia with the barbershop in general. Like, I know there's still barbershops in existence, but I don't think they're like what they were at this time period in America.
Well, have you been into the barbershop in Rusk, Cody? Because, you know, it's like stepping into a time machine. uh, it's
It,
very much the same.
I
Uh,
remember, but if you could notice, I haven't had to go to the barber in quite some
right.
time.
Whoops. Sorry.
Back when I lived in Cleveland, there was a barbershop downtown in like the banking business district. It was
Mhm.
super small. It was like maybe smaller than this room that I'm in right now, and there are only two chairs in it, I think. It didn't quite have the that 1950s look to it, but it definitely had an older vibe than a lot of the, hairstyling places you might go to today, and that was really cool. And they also have there's a barber college just across the bridge from downtown in Cleveland that I used to go to when I learned that you can go to that school and get your hair cut for like $5 because they're all students. Now they're under
Mhm.
supervision, of course. So if something goes wrong, there's a teacher there who can try to fix it. But
Right.
it was a $5 haircut, and I didn't really care that much at the time because I was like 22, and so I would get my
Mhm.
$5 haircut at the barber college.
Did you ever have someone shave you with the razor blade?
Yeah, so that's
Those are
something. So I
nice.
learned when my dad was dating a hairstylist for a few years. I asked her once what the difference was, and she said the main difference between barbers and hairstylists is barbers have a specific license that allows them to use a straight razor that
Mhm.
most hairstylists do not have. And that's one of the things they have to learn in school. So yeah, they would do the straight razor on the back of the neck. I never
Yeah.
had them shave my face. I think
Okay.
that costs
I,
extra, but they would
I
shave the
had my
back of your
face
neck.
done once. It's very nice.
Uh,
But if
Yeah,
you see, I haven't been to a barber in some time myself either.
yeah.
So
yeah, I just can't do it. I guess maybe watching and listening to Sweeney Todd, but also like just that's like ultimate trust having someone with that like near your like jugular.
well, the barber shop I told you the one here in Rusk. When I went, the gentleman who's running it now, his dad
Hmm.
was cutting our hair, and this dude's, I mean, just his hands would do this, but once he took that straight razor, it was it was spot on. It was pinpoint, just accurate, and I would always just sit there and be like, oh my god, please don't nick me, because I can only imagine what a straight razor nick feels like. But he always did a great job.
Side tangent, not about this movie, but I didn't know this till recently though. You know why they have like the red white striping at barbershops?
I think I did read this once. Isn't it something about medicine and
Yeah,
blood?
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
the barbers also used to be like a sort of doctor back in the day. Like, I guess if you couldn't afford to go to a doctor, the barber would like help you with whatever other things you needed. Because I think even in, I could be wrong, but I think even in the stage musical of Sweeney Todd, they talk about like tooth removals or like something like a dentist would do. So it's kind of
Okay.
so it's kind of interesting that just that motif stayed with the barber, even though now it's just haircuts.
Right.
But like you were saying about like the classic mixed with the modern, I mean, that's part of the Coens because I feel like the majority of their movies aren't even set in modern day. Like even something like Fargo, it takes place like a decade before the
Oh,
movies.
right.
Mhm.
And they have one of the greatest living cinematographers shooting this movie, Roger Deakins. So like it's crisp black and white. They're using all the motifs that you have in a noir. And it's interesting you bring up Billy Wilder because this movie's heavily influenced by the Joseph Kane novels, who wrote Double Indemnity.
And
So
the postman always rings twice.
yeah, so those are two classic noir films that they're kind of referencing. And I mean, even so that we have Billy Bob narrating the movie, which is a motif from most of those films. The
Mhm.
protagonist narrates everything going on in this movie. Ugh. And this is the first time they work with him. They don't work with him much, and he, like a lot of actors, just took this job without even reading the script. He was just like, "Well, it can't be bad. It's the Coen Brothers."
Right. I was catching
Yeah.
a lot of Bad Santa vibes, like as far as his demeanor, and I know that's like a really weird comparison like, between this and Bad Santa. They're two totally different movies, but it was kind of like another heavy hitter, in my opinion, James Gandolfini, which I love in anything he does. But this is early. This is early Sopranos because Sopranos was
Hmm.
'99, so this had to have been between like the first two seasons of Sopranos. So I'm getting a lot of Tony Soprano vibes in this role, um, in the character, but in because if you listen to any James Gandolfini interviews, the accent that he used, he laid on really thick for the role, but he also uses it in this movie too. So I was picking up a lot of Tony vibes uh, in this, which is pretty cool.
A lot
Uh,
of the people in this movie have a very distinct way of carrying themselves, like James Gandolfini and Billy Bob Thornton. But even like Tony Shalhoub and John Polito, there's
Yeah,
there's no other actors like these specific actors. Like they're brought on to do these very specific things because it's what they excel at, and
right.
no one's like them.
so it's kind of interesting with Shalhoub because he's kind of playing a similar character he played in Barton Fink. He's just a lawyer this time instead of
Mhm.
a Hollywood executive, but it's exactly like what you hire Tony Shalhoub to do. Like he's gonna play the fast talking,
Right.
wise, whatever, know it all.
Mhm. Was this
And the,
pre-Monk for him? Was this
I
around the time?
I
I
think this
think
is either
so.
right
Yeah.
before Monk or right as Monk
I
comes
think it
on
was before.
TV. Yeah.
So yeah,
Okay.
Monk begins in 2002, so right
Okay.
before.
Yes.
I love
But
how quickly he dismisses a murder confession when he's trying to like
Yeah.
spitball how to win this case. He's like, "No, I don't like that. We're not going to use that. We're going to go back to the other one."
Yeah.
And like
Well, I
so
mean, the
Francis
facts
McDormand and Billy
matter.
Bob Thornton are just staring each other in the eyes, having a whole conversation
Mhm.
separately.
so we kind of don't talk all in order, so apologies if I'm going to kind of cut to the ending and we circle back and forth, but I think this movie's title is interesting and I forgot how it ended, but for if you watch all these Coen Brother movies, you see that they have some sort of weird philosophy. Karma is a force of nature in their movies, and when you do something bad, it's gonna come back and get you. You're gonna get punished.
Mhm.
But I think it's interesting that it's called The Man Who Wasn't There, because for the majority of the movie, it's like he doesn't exist and like he's getting away with everything because people just don't even acknowledge he's there, really. And then at the end, he gets busted for the thing he didn't do that the Gandolfini character did.
Mhm. So he's still being punished in a way for, the bribe and everything, but but it was, it was harsh. Like this does not end on any good note at all. Like on an up note, it ends on a downside, which kind of threw me for a loop, because there's even in their other films, like, I don't know, none of them to me seem to end as on a down note like this one does. Everyone dies. Like, everyone dies in this movie, except for the brother-in-law and Charlotte or Johansson. Her character, which that was a lot, but
I think that goes back to the noir influence of this movie, because consequences are inevitable, and people might
Mhm.
not necessarily be punished for what they did, but they're going to be punished somehow, and there's no escaping it. Death and betrayal is going to happen in this
Right.
story, one way or another, for everyone.
Right, because his actions end up killing his wife. And like, yeah, she's having an affair with Gandolfini and she's helping him, like,
Cook the
embezzle
books.
the books, but like, did she deserve to die because he wanted to get some money out of the guy having an affair with his wife?
By the rules of film noir, I guess so.
Yeah. Which again, she's great. I mean, when is Frances McDormand not great? But like, yeah, just and kind of interesting they put her in this movie too, as she was in their first film, which is the only other really true noir I guess they've done is Blood Simple.
mhm.
Big Lebowski is kind of a noir in a way.
Yeah, it's well, I think they described it. It's very influenced by the Philip Marlowe
Right.
stories, but like they're like, what if a detective and a stoner comedy like were the same? Because
Yeah,
It's like it uses the blueprint
stoner
of a
noir.
noir.
Yeah.
Yeah.
they said there's a lot of similarities between a detective story and a stoner movie, because there's a lot of like trying to retrace your steps and mistaken identities,
Mm-hmm.
and that's something we've discovered with doing these films is we like how they go from different genres, but like they put their little taste or flavor into that genre. Like, well, this is the Coen's version of a noir. This is the Coen's version of a Western.
Yeah.
Or a musical.
Yeah, or a musical. Yeah, it's
Speaking
like,
of music, there's no score to this really. Uh, you have the big band music playing at the party. You have Johansson's character playing the piano, but other than that, it's dialogue.
Silent.
Yeah, it's just dialogue, which is another interesting choice, and it works, because I kept sitting there. I was like, something's weird about this, and I can't put my finger on it. And Lindsay was like, there's no score, there's no soundtrack. I mean, you hear a band playing when they're at the party, and you hear the girl play the piano, but other than that, it's all dialogue. I was like, that's right, but it totally works. They totally pull it off with this movie, because usually a score plays such a big role in a film as far as getting a scene across, or the mood, setting the mood, or we all love John Williams, you know what I'm talking about. But in this, there's not really any score, and to me, that's one of the little things that I liked about it.
is there even I can't remember when the credits rolled. Is there even like a credited person? Like, did Carter Burwell work on this movie?
I'm
I'm
checking
not
that
sure.
now.
Yeah, Lindsay's checking it.
who
So
they
I think when
usually
the
work
credits
with.
plays, I think it's still that Beethoven music.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I don't see a credit. This says music by Carter Burwell
Okay,
on IMDb.
it's usually who they work with.
Mhm.
Yeah. In a way, Billy Bob Thornton's voice underscores the movie, and I wonder if
Right.
there had been a literal score, I wonder if his voice and the music would have been in conflict with each other.
Hmm.
Right.
Right.
Because again, his narration is one of the other uh, big things that stood out, to this movie. Because again, I watched it for the first time, and anytime he was narrating, I mean, I was just it drew me in. Like his
He does
narration
have
was
a great narrator's voice.
yeah.
Mhm.
He narrated the crap out of that movie. Excuse me.
Well, I think this might, if it's not his best, I think this has got to be among his best performances as an actor. And interesting, again, another Billy Wilder story. Um, Billy Bob Thornton actually met Billy Wilder while he was still a struggling actor at a restaurant. He was waiting tables,
Huh.
and he just sparked up a conversation with Billy Wilder. And Billy Wilder was like, "You want to be an actor?" He's like, "My suggestion to you is like write your own material because you're not a leading man. You're not a leading man."
hmm
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, that's harsh, but I think he was trying to tell him how he could make it in the business
Right.
because he's he's a character actor at best,
Yeah,
you know.
he has to work with what he's got. I understand that. I know if you're a struggling actor, hearing you're not leading material probably.
But he probably took that to
And was
fruition
like,
and was
sure.
like Sling Blade.
Well, he did another movie prior to Sling Blade that's really good. It's called One False Move, and it has Bill Paxton in it. And it's the same guy that directed Devil in a Blue Dress.
Okay.
But yeah, this is, oddly, you guys might laugh, but this is oddly, this movie's made at the height of Billy Bob fever. Like,
Oh my gosh.
I thought
Monsters
that too,
Ball,
actually.
yeah.
Well, he had just gotten an Oscar nomination for Simple Plan a couple years before this. And I think he's
Mhm.
actually much better here than he is in A Simple Plan.
yeah,
Where
this
he's,
is, and I
where
read a
he's partly
review
showing
on
emotion. Sorry.
Letterboxd where they were like, Billy Bob's eyebrows could lift a vehicle. Like how he raises his eyebrows in this movie.
Yeah.
He does. He's very Marlboro
Subdued.
Man in this whole movie. Like
Yeah.
he just looks like the perfect. Like he looks like a magazine cover back when we were like, smoking's good for you, your wife, and your children. Like
Yeah,
one of
like
those.
a doctor's like free cigarettes for
Yeah.
everyone. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't know if Billy Bob was ever a smoker, but like this may be like the best like hold a cigarette in your mouth I've seen in a movie.
The whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I can't stand cigarettes or the smell.
But he looks
Nothing
cool
against
as hell.
anyone. Nothing against anyone who does smoke. That's your business. But to me, it's I can't take it. But that made me want a cigarette like that, and I'm like, I don't smoke. Like him smoking was like, man, I kind of want a cigarette now, and I was like, I don't even smoke.
As much as I don't like cigarettes either, it looks so damn cool in black and white. Just the smoke and the light.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And they again going back to like older black and white films and the film noir, the noir films and stuff. Just some of those shots. Like there was a shot with Tony Shalhoub's character, and he was standing there, and it was the shadows from the bars were against him, and I was like, wow, that's a really beautiful shot. Like he was throwing his gab out there, his lawyer gab, but the way they had him standing in front of the bars and the way the light was hitting it, I was like, man, these shots are really beautiful. Like these shots are gorgeous.
Watching this really was like how I remember reading The Postman Always Rings Twice. Like it's very, I don't know, like the fact that there's no music, the fact that you're just like staring intensely into these beautiful black and white scenes, and everybody's just kind of like very, very strongly but slowly like moving through the plot is it's really well done.
Right.
I like a quiet movie. I don't know.
Oh, we talk about how great Billy Bob is, and I think that's one of the reasons the Coens mostly work with character actors is because they can take on those nuances and colloquialism of the area they're capturing. This almost was Bill Murray in the lead. I don't think I can see Bill Murray in this.
No, I he can play melancholy really, really well. He can do that, but it would have been a totally different translation.
He can't not be the center of attention, so he couldn't be the man that wasn't there.
Right. Like,
I feel like he'd be more mopey in
Yeah.
this role, whereas like Billy Bob is very stoic and distanced. Where I feel like Bill Murray would just be too down in the dumps about it all and be a completely different vibe.
He plays disconnected enough to get the title of the movie across. He really was the man who wasn't there because he was so emotionally distanced. And to me, it seemed like he came across as someone who had a really hard case of depression and just didn't know, was just there. He was floating through the entire thing. And what sums it up is when he's at the beginning, towards the beginning of the film, and he's narrating, and he's like, a husband knows, I always suspected that there was something going on, but hey, what are you going to do?
It's a free country. And then the way he talks about meeting her, he's like, a few weeks later, she suggested we get married, and I asked if she wanted to get to know me more, and she's like, why? Does it get any better?
Yeah,
like,
it's just
ow.
And that's what, and he's like, yeah, that's what, we met on a blind date, and that was one of the things that attracted her to me was the fact that I didn't say anything, and that's the whole point where he is not there. He is unattached from the entire thing, but yet I don't know. He gets mixed up into it, but he plays that really well. Just that. No emotion, and the only time he cracks a smile is when he's listening to Johansson's character play the piano, which that came across as a little oogie. I don't think that's what they were going for. Like, I know that was probably listening to her play music was the only thing that kind of brought him a little peace. Now, in today's society, you could look at that and be like, that's a little gross because maybe, he's Billy Bob Thornton, and she was my age at the time, which was 18, 19, around that time. So it did come across as a loogie. But when you get further into the film, you realize that he is depressed, and her music is the only thing that
he finds joy in.
That he finds joy in, to the point to where he wants to see her go on. And like, even with the car crash scene where she comes on to him, he's like, what the hell is going on? Don't, I think you misread this. Like, I'm an old depressed sad man, and I just want to listen to your music. Like, that's the only thing that brings me. Unless I was misinterpreting, because at first I was like,
no, that was a real plot twist for me, because I wouldn't trust any, with regular Billy Bob Thornton, I wouldn't trust any Scarlett Johanssons or anything like that.
Yeah, so I don't know, but yeah, he did portray that really well, and I know that kind of went off on a tangent, but I could not see Bill Murray
doing
in that role, giving that performance.
I think he is depressed, but maybe I was also reading into this too much as a gay man. But I think he's also repressed. I think Ed's a little bit queer.
Okay.
There is that moment with
there's that moment with Polito, but like he shoots it down like immediately. He's like, "You're out of line, mister."
Well, when you think about it, a lot of closeted, repressed men, especially in
that time
area,
period,
in that time period, even today, in our behind the pine curtain, will reject it to the point to where it offends them almost.
Well, why was that the pass that he picked up on, and not the fact that Scarlett Johansson was about to cause them to wreck their car?
That's interesting.
I mean? Like, he didn't see that kind of like, oh, an older man is paying attention to me. type of, not really puppy love, but you know,
Right.
he didn't see that coming. But it was like one little look from that other guy, and he's like, "Hey, hey, hey."
Yeah,
no.
like
he was disinterested in Creighton's past, but he was repulsed by Birdie's.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Right.
And the thing about Creighton, in this time and place, I feel as though someone like Creighton would not make a pass on another man unless he was absolutely sure about that other person, because to do something like that would be incredibly dangerous.
Yeah.
In this time and place.
So
he must have seen something in Ed, and he thought this could be a thing.
Right.
But Ed shuts it down. Perhaps he's closeted to the point of self-denial.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know a lot myself, before I came out, I just didn't really acknowledge it. And maybe being in this time and place, this generation, he has just lived his life in some sort of asexual denial. Because he even mentions to the mortician, or not, the medical examiner, that he and Doris hadn't even had intercourse in many, many years.
Which I guess is why she was having an affair, partly.
Yeah, also because maybe he wasn't interested in her in quite that way.
Right.
Well, their marriage seemed more like one of convenience. She wanted a man who didn't talk a lot, and he was like, "Yeah, okay, I guess I got it. I guess
it'll
getting
make me
married
look
is what you're
normal."
supposed to do." Yeah.
But
and when you think about it, his reaction to Scarlett's character when that happens, it does make a lot more sense now that it was put off. It was like, whoa, stop. That's not what.
It's not my intention. What I want.
Not my intention. And so yeah, that does make a lot of sense now when you think back on those certain scenes in the movie. That is a good theory or a good point.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking that. I was thinking like maybe he was just asexual, but that is a very interesting read, and it's probably correct. Even if the Coens didn't do it intentionally, it's there.
Right.
I think if The Big Lebowski is more of a comedy. Go ahead. Sorry.
Do we think that Creighton John Polito would have not screwed him out of the $10,000 and actually was trying to do a dry cleaning business?
I don't find him very trustworthy.
I was fixing to say he seems like a sleazeball to me.
His conniptions when he's like, he just casually says, "Hey, you're not going to screw me on this, are you?" And he's just like, "Take it to the bank, take it to a lawyer."
Take it to a lawyer. And he's sitting there counting the money, and he looks like he's about to have a heart attack because he's holding $10,000 in his hand. He's sweating profusely, and he's like, "Oh my God, this actually worked! Like a sucker brought me $10,000 in cash." Because that's when he seemed surprised that he didn't bring him a check. He goes, cash. Wow, okay, yeah, this is.
He was expecting to have to do some forgery work on that banknote or something, and he's like, "Okay, I could just walk away today."
Right.
And yeah, it's interesting because, and I guess maybe Billy Bob didn't pick on it, and maybe the Coens did, because there was a scene they were filming where Billy Bob was going to act or look like he was aroused in one of those piano scenes, and the Coens are like, no, you're not aroused at this at all. This is not the kind of thing going on, even though it kind of feels like some sort of icky thing going on. And you obviously understand why Scarlett Johansson's, because she's like, "Oh, this older man's taking interest in me. I guess he wants something."
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It looks like a Lolita situation,
really,
but it's really not.
Especially with so many things going wrong for Billy Bob specifically. Now that we've talked about like the possible sexuality of the character, it makes a lot more sense that it was just like, this is the only thing that is consistent and brings me joy at all.
Because the only smile you ever see him crack in the film is when he is listening to her play or he's around her. So yeah, I mean, I think, because look, and I really hate to say this, but in today's world, that's immediately where my mind went.
I thought for sure that's where that was
like,
headed.
Ooh, that's where he's wanting to be with her, and that's oogie and that's gross because she's
child.
underage. He's a child, but when you dissect it and you look at it, and you get to the car crash where he's put off by it, like it is kind of an odd little twist there, but yeah, I mean that's. And I hate that. That's where my mind automatically went because
that's where so many movies automatically go. It's gross.
Yeah.
But it was refreshing that it didn't go there because I was like, oh, if it goes there, then wow, that kind of just doesn't ruin the film. It's just a letdown because that's just not cool. It's not cool in everyday society. And I know it's a story, and they're trying to portray a story, but it's still just a movie. But I am glad that they went in another direction.
Do you think her father did recognize something? Richard Jenkins' character recognized that, or was he just being naive of what was going on?
I think, well, almost every scene that you see him in, he's nodding off because he's
drunk
toasted.
or distracted.
He's drunk or distracted, yeah.
I think he's just aloof.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which is apparently he almost turned this film down because he had been kind of rejected from previous attempts to work with the Coens because he almost was in Fargo and he was almost in Miller's Crossing and didn't get the roles.
Wow.
But I mean, like, he's just one of those guys, you put him in a movie, he's gonna just be the character because he has one of those faces. Like, he's just the actor.
Right.
He's not gonna, he doesn't have a persona, and most people probably don't even know his name. They're like, oh yeah, that guy, I've seen him in something.
Mm-hmm.
Like 6 Feet Under had just started for him around the time this movie comes out. So this is like an early HBO powerhouse movie with Candlewini and Jenkins
I need
both
to
in
finish
it.
that series.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah, I heard it was really great. I got into like the first few episodes of season 2 back when we had our comic book shop, and then I just I would watch them at night, and I just totally I can't remember what happened, but I just never finished the series. But it was great.
Is it less icky than American Beauty?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
that is not a movie.
It's definitely HBO, but
yeah, but I'm
know.
just saying I have not rewatched American Beauty, but I imagine that movie has not aged well at all.
I haven't seen American Beauty, and I really don't have any interest, in seeing it.
I like American Beauty for the most part. I had to rewatch it a couple years ago for a podcast episode, and it doesn't play as bad as you would think it would, as long as you keep in mind that it's meant to be a dark satire of like American suburbia and things like that. Then it kind of it works.
Was this after the Spacey allegations came? Okay.
Yeah, this was after Spacey happened, but if you just look at it with this the intent that it's supposed to be this like bleak satire of how fucked up American suburbia is, then it kind of works. But I can see how on the surface it does look very gross in hindsight.
Right.
Yeah. But
Hello.
Yeah.
Everybody's still here.
Sound cut out all of a sudden.
Yeah, we're still here.
Me too.
Yeah. We're still here. Can you hear me?
Okay, cool. Trying to think what else we need to talk about this wonderfully made movie. I mean, I think Gandolfini, he's kind of just playing, he's good, but he's kind of playing what roles we know him to play at this time period, not just Tony Soprano, but like in his film work prior, he's kind of like the heavy,
Yeah.
True Romance, Get Shorty.
Yeah. He was so good in this. Again, like, I'm a huge Soprano fan, I know it's maybe not everybody's cup of tea, but he was just so good in that series, and anything that he does, I'm here for it. I think he was overshadowed by Sopranos.
Yeah.
But he was just such a great actor. Like he had so many great roles.
One of his last roles, this movie, Enough Said, with Julia
Oh,
Louis-Dreyfus. He's so good in that.
Yeah, and he's
It's
like,
such a complete
I haven't seen that.
diversion from what we usually see him in.
I want to see
Just like
that now.
like a romantic lead with Julia
Mhm.
Louis-Dreyfus.
That's
he
cool.
plays a very sweet, kind-natured person, like the very opposite of Tony Soprano.
Enough
Yeah.
said.
Aw.
Okay, I'm gonna watch that then. So
It was his
On my list.
last or second to last movie he did, I think, before he
Mhm.
passed.
that's cool.
It's the last that came out, like, or he filmed completely, because I think he did a movie came out he did with Tom Hardy after he died,
Oh yeah,
which is more kind of a Gandolfini type performance that you
it's
would cast.
Right.
a Dennis Lehane movie.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I know another thing I find interesting in this movie is he talks about at the beginning, like he just got into the barber profession because, you know, his brother-in-law inherited the shop from his dad, his wife's father.
Mhm.
But I think he's actually the better barber than his brother-in-law. Like, I think he's actually like really skilled at his job,
Well,
whereas,
he doesn't gab, and
yeah,
Well, he runs the whole
He's-
shop after his
he's-
brother-in-law stops coming. So
yeah, he's very meticulous. I mean, he pinpoints on that hair because they make a point of him. You know, he studies the hair.
yeah,
And
he gets really
there's a-
philosophical about haircuts
Yeah.
sometimes.
There's a scene where he's talking to his brother-in-law, like, you know, and I can't remember the exact dialogue, but it stood out because he's sitting there talking about how the hair, like they keep cutting it, and
it
he
keeps coming
cuts it,
back.
and it keeps coming back, and he throws the hair into the dirt, and it's very it's a moment for him. It's a moment, and his brother-in-law is just like, what
What are
well,
you
what the hell are
talking
you talking
about?
about? Yeah, like he's just there. He can gab and cut the hair and go on, but to him, it's an art. It's an art form almost. It's kind of like okay, kind of like the way Johansson's character played the piano. I think there was a connection on the way he. This may just be me, but the way that he took pride in cutting hair and as meticulous as he was, maybe that's the way he
He kind of feels
He
about music at this
felt
point.
about her playing piano. You know, it was a little more philosophical to him than it was to her. She's a teen. She didn't
Yeah.
play.
Well, think about at that interview with the piano expert or whatever. He's staring at those little kids' haircuts in the front. He's just like
Yeah, it's
studying their heads until that guy comes out to talk to him.
right. So
But-
maybe there was some sort of metaphorical something that we didn't pick up on between her playing the piano and him cutting hair. You know,
I think he recognized a certain craftsmanship in her that
Right.
he feels with
Right.
himself. Only for her, it was the piano, and maybe that's the connection he felt to her.
right.
Like she does to the piano what he does to hair.
Yeah.
Besides the ickiness of where we think it's going or where it seems like it, also when he has that conversation with the piano teacher, doesn't that have like the energy of when like a parent is like, oh, my kid's the best at this thing, and the
Yeah.
kid's like, I'm just doing this for fun. It's like he like took the band kid and's like, we're gonna make a profession. They're like, I'm just playing band for fun, I don't want to.
And the teacher's like, "Look, I'm sorry to be the
She's
one to
a
tell
very
you, but your
nice
kid
girl."
sucks."
No,
I mean,
he doesn't say. He's like, she hits all the right notes. There is nothing spectacular beyond that she can play.
Yeah.
She'll make a good typist or something. And he's
Yeah.
like, how dare you?
Tap. He even
Like
does
she's
the
technically
tap.
precise, but not an artist.
Right.
Right.
And this movie does another thing that I like in movies is when we watch a movie about someone who's just really good at their job.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Like-
if
like
you
there's
if you ever go ahead.
There's a new movie out. I think it's streaming on Peacock with Mark Rylance where he's like a tailor. And it's almost like an art form, like how and like he's like ironing and sewing and it's like intricate. It's sort of similar like this. It has a little bit noir aspects to it. It's a little more conventional movie though, like where you think it goes. But like,
Right.
yeah, I like stories about someone who's just like the best at their job. Like,
Well, they're just like, it's one of those things where he even says when he's talking, he's like, once you master the basics, you only have to remember so many things. If you ever watch like TikToks of people who are very good at what they do, they're so fluid in their movements, and it's like muscle memory, and it's so easy and it flows for them, where it does become an art form once you master like the actual application of it.
Right.
How do we feel about the subplot of UFOs possibly?
I think she should have got to go up on that UFO at the end. I don't think that was very fair. I thought for sure that we would find out that Big Dave was involved in like organized crime or something, because she's like, the lights showed up and they took him away in their ship and he never talked about it. It's like, yeah, that sounds like
And
a mob boss meeting you just weren't invited to.
The look on her face, like through the entire, even at dinner, like when they have him over dinner,
A deer in the headlights.
she has this deer in the headlights look on her face, and I didn't know what to think about that. I can't wait for that to kind of go
to resolve. I was waiting for something to happen.
Yeah, and then the whole, like where he's kind of dreaming, I guess, and he walks out of the prison and the UFO shows up, and it takes, like, it doesn't, maybe he walks out, it's a metaphor for something that we missed. Like he walks out and he's expecting to be taken by this UFO to escape whatever fate that has befallen him, and it doesn't take him. Like it shines a light on him and then he just flies off.
I had completely forgotten about the UFO thing when I went to revisit this. The actress's name is Catherine Borowitz. I'm reading, plays Big Dave's widow. Her level of commitment in that scene where she's just telling the story on the porch, I could not believe that I hadn't seen her in a million different movies. So I had to look her up. She's done a couple other Coen films, but not a whole lot else, like of note, quote unquote. And I couldn't believe it because she is so good in that scene.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she's 110%, and
she sells it.
Yeah,
she sells it. She made me think that, oh my gosh,
there's going to be UFOs
are they
in this
about
movie?
to bring the actual UFOs into this movie? Like
they did. You see two of them. One's in a magazine.
Yeah.
So, for whatever reason, it brings me up another scene, which I guess is a flashback with the salesman, Christopher McDonald, trying to sell the gravel. Do we think that Ed might be a little bit of a sucker, or does this play more into like maybe he's a repressed gay man a little bit too?
You mean Christopher McDonald?
Yeah,
Also
like...
being...
I don't know if Christopher McDonald's also gay, but maybe that's why like Billy Bob like is still kind of talking to him. Letting him speak.
Letting him pitch it even though he's not going to buy any asphalt for his driveway.
Right. And then she shows up and she's like...
And she shuts it down immediately, all right?
Yeah. Does she know? Does she maybe suspect that...
I don't think she cares.
Yeah,
I have a feeling she probably knows, but also, doesn't care like Lindsay's saying. I think for her, this is sort of a marriage of convenience.
Mm-hmm.
Like she just needs a marriage in order to do what she wants to do. And she doesn't really care. She doesn't get anything out of this marriage other than what it provides.
Normal.
Yeah.
Back in the 50s. You know.
Yeah.
And that's why she gets wasted at that wedding, because she knows that baby question is coming. She's like, why don't you guys have any kids? You guys both have jobs. She's like, that's why I can't stand my family.
Maybe she likes that he'll shave her legs for her.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. He is a barber, and he can.
Yeah.
He's there to shave her legs and hand her a cigarette.
He's precise, you know. So.
And there's nothing really remotely sexual about it either.
No, at all.
Like because that scene comes pretty early in the movie, and you would think another pair of actors or another director would try to like eroticize that moment, but it's actually pretty clinical.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's like he's narrating. He's like, no water, you know.
He's talking about shaving her legs.
Yeah, he's talking about shaving her legs, and she's like, "Give me a drag," and that's strictly it. Like, you're right. There's nothing sexual there at all. There's no innuendo. It's just he rolls up one sleeve, takes the razor, shaves a leg, and he's sitting there narrating, thinking to himself about how. You're not going to use any water on it. It's smooth. The
science of the shave.
There's a science to the shave, and there's nothing You know, it's not like, oh, there's a naked lady in the tub. It's just very precise.
I thought for sure that was going to get weird. I was like, I don't want to see whatever Billy Bob's about to do, but it didn't. It was over.
Not Monsters Ball, Lindsay.
Oh my gosh. Can I tell a little story about Monsters Ball? It has nothing to do with the movie so much. I remember that movie when it came out being popular and all the awards coming out for everybody who was in it. That was around the time that DVD players started to be really affordable. And my mom gifted my grandparents with their first DVD player and a few DVDs. And we're all together. And she's like, let's watch a movie. I heard this one's really good. And they started Monsters Ball. And the first scene that comes on, that exactly the kind of scene I expect to see Billy Bob Thornton in. My mom and my grandparents all screamed at the top of their lungs. I remember being like thrown into another room really quickly with toys or a video game system or something. And they're like, we're watching a different movie. And the rest of the day was just the quietest.
The scene with like the prostitute in like the motel room. Yeah.
Yes.
You know what's funny? So I grew up in a pretty open household. Like my parents didn't really care what I watched. Like I grew up watching a lot of horror movies, you know, which come with their share of gore and nudity and all sorts of stuff. The only movie that my family ever said I was not allowed to watch growing up was Monsters Ball. And I think my mom had seen it first somehow, or she had heard about it maybe. And I was forbidden from watching that film for a while. And then one time I rented it from the library when I was like a teenager. I was quote unquote old enough, whatever. And when Lindsay mentioned DVDs, this is what triggered this memory. Because I go to watch the movie and it gets to the Billy Bob Thornton Halle Berry sex scene. And this is a DVD from the library. And it skipped so hard during that scene. I can only imagine how many people were rewinding and pausing, etc. during this one particular scene. Everywhere else in the movie was fine. There were no skips, no glitches. It was only during that sequence.
They were wearing that DVD out.
It's the same adage.
Yes.
A lot of, and they bring it up in Stranger Things about how people would return Fast Times at Ridgemont High
At the Phoebe Cates scene, yeah.
Pause on the Phoebe Gates scene, and they'd have to go rewind it from that scene forward because that's the only, you know, that was the most paused
That
scene.
was what they were watching out of that whole movie.
Do you guys listen to You Must Remember This, the film history podcast?
Oh,
So right
no,
now,
we will now.
Her current season, it's Karina Longworth. It's Ryan Johnson's wife. She has a film history podcast. She's been going for many years, and she has different seasons. And this current season is on the erotic films of the 80s. And she did an episode that about Fast Times and another movie that came out that year. And she had mentioned how a lot of video rental stores, their tapes were coming back damaged because at that particular scene, because people were wearing out their VCRs with the Phoebe Cates sequence.
I didn't know that was Ryan Johnson's wife. I just heard her on the Letterbox show because she talked about Body Double, American Gigolo.
Yeah, that's this season.
Yeah,
she did Body Heat and
Body 9.5 weeks.
Yeah,
and,
that's her current season. She's doing the erotic 90s next.
No Way Out. No Way Out. That's what the four films were. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to her getting into Basic Instinct. It's my personal favorite.
Is that your favorite of the erotic thrillers of that era?
It was a very formative film for me. In a gay way.
In a side tangent of erotic thrillers, I don't know why Michael Douglas was so likable in those type of roles because he was such a sleazebag in those movies. Like, have you heard what the original ending of Fatal Attraction was supposed to be?
Yeah, it was basically supposed to be Madame Butterfly, but then they changed it because test audiences didn't like it.
Yeah, they didn't like that he was getting pinned for her murder and like that she was
got
pregnant.
away with it.
Yeah. And like they were watching it with an audience, and one of the producers is like, "I can't believe the audience still likes you. Like, they should hate you in this movie."
Right.
But yeah, but I wonder because I hear they're remaking it sort of as a TV show. I wonder if they're going to do the original ending now because it seems like that would be prime to do like the actual ending of that story.
I wonder if it would play out better, that ending as a series as opposed to a film.
Yeah. Is there anything else about this movie or a performance we haven't mentioned or something we've forgotten about this movie before we kind of rate it?
Something I tend to think about when a movie is visually stylistic is why it is so stylistic. And when we get to the ending and we realize that his narration has been him retelling his story in
Mhm.
written form for a men's magazine, it it implies to me that a lot of what we are seeing or have been seeing up to that point is memory, and this is his mental retelling of the story. Um, and this would have been around the time when noirs were big, so maybe this is his sort of stylistic twist on the movies that were popular in the day, like amplifying all
Mhm.
those lighting choices and camera movements and things like that. That's just a weird thing that I think of. It goes back to like German expressionism and things like that, which was was an influence on classic noir.
Mhm.
So that's just a
Yeah.
weird thing that I think about sometimes.
Yeah, and I think this movie begins now. They have done sort of esoteric films before with weird endings, like Barton Fink, you could argue, is very much like that. But I think this kind of begins that era of their filmmaking because a lot of their movies tend to get a little more ob- I don't know if obscure is the right word, but they kind of don't have like clear cut endings. Like they've done like weird endings before, but I feel like after this, like their a lot of their endings are kind of just
Well, I remember being very
abrupt.
frustrated the first time I watched No Country for Old Men because a lot of the climax happens off screen from what I
Hmm.
recall, and we're just sort of given the aftermath and sort of told what happened. I remember at the time finding that really frustrating. Now it's
Mhm.
grown on me a little bit more. And then, after they do No Country for Old Men, they have a Serious Man, and I remember the ending
Hmm.
to that movie really threw me off
Oh
back
yeah.
when I saw it. So yeah, I think they're leaning into their own style of storytelling here. I think they've maybe reached the point in their careers where they can start taking risks, and studios aren't going to push back quite so much because
Mhm.
they have a record of being an awards contender and a critic's darling and things like that, so they can sort of do whatever the hell they want.
Right.
Yeah, and I think this is among, which is kind of hard to say because almost I would argue that maybe like only like 4 to 5 of their films aren't great. So it's kind of hard to say like, oh, this is it's because like almost all of them are great, but like this is up to task of any of their other movies. And like
Mhm.
if you say this is your favorite Coen Brothers movie, I'd be like, okay, right on, it's great. It's probably the most noir they've ever done. So
Probably top five for me.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's again. This was a first watch for me, and I was pleasantly surprised because I've liked just about everything else they've done. Like Lebowski is probably my number one because I'm a huge Lebowski fan. I think it's hilarious. But this film was a gem. Like it just, I can't believe I had slept on this movie for so long. Like I'm ready to. I'm honestly ready to watch it again a little bit later just to soak it in and maybe catch things that I missed before or
Especially now that we've talked about it with other people besides each
yeah,
other.
yeah. We've talked about him maybe being repressed and just lots of different aspects of it to look at now, and so yeah, I was you know it's up there in my opinion.
So, Brendan, the rankings we have for the Coen brothers, if you love this movie, you think it's great, it's a masterpiece, it's a damn fine picture. If it's entertaining, it hits the marks, it does its job, it's quirky but delightful. Of course, I always throw a deep dive for some more obscure fans only, movie nerd stuff only. If it's a little mediocre, doesn't quite hit up to snuff, it's funny looking. And then if it's terrible, it's a disaster. It's what I describe almost every plot of a Coen Brothers movie. It's a clusterfuck.
Hmm. I would probably rate this as a damn fine picture.
Yeah.
I'm quite a big fan of it. It's easily top 5 for me. And it would probably be this and Miller's Crossing, Fargo, Big Lebowski, then probably maybe Blood Simple to round it
Mm,
out. That's probably my top 5 Coens. I'm not sure what the ranking of that 5 is, but I think Man Who Wasn't There is solidly in it.
okay.
Right. Yeah, it's solid in my opinion. It was a damn fine movie. So I think it could be a toss up. I think it could be a damn fine movie and a deep dive because again, I had slept on it for so long, and it's one that you just don't, in my opinion, you don't hear a lot about. But who knows? I mean, I'm pretty sure that there are lots of other film critics that know this really well. But to me, um, it was a damn fine movie. So I was very pleased with it.
Lindsay around?
Oh, I'm here. I'm sorry. I was looking at my notes. I agree that it's a damn fine picture. I do agree with the idea that it could be a deep dive again because it's a Coen Brothers movie and you're expecting like a pretty great soundtrack, like some really good music, and you don't get that. And the focus on the story is like it's laser focus on the plot, and I think since Big Lebowski's been mentioned quite a few times, if Big Lebowski follows the comedy of errors type formula, I think this is a tragedy of errors. I think that the way the plot moves forward, you keep expecting like everybody gets consequences that are totally different than what you expect. I honestly, because he was writing that as a story that he was getting paid for, I thought something's going to happen and he's going to get out of jail or he's going to get out, and he doesn't. And that's it. That's the end. Goodbye. But I think it is a damn fine picture, 100%.
I do believe it's a damn fine picture. I do also think it's a deep dive as well because even though the Coens aren't like box office or like average movie going popular films, I think this might be one of their more obscure films. I think people who really love noir, I can certainly understand why it's in their top 5. You know, I'm not sure where these might be the hardest filmmakers for me to make like a list of where their films rank because I feel like 12 to 13 of their films could be like my favorite depending on what mood I'm in. I think personally for me this one doesn't quite have the rewatchability as some of their other movies, and it's missing a little bit of the cadence of the humor that they usually put in a lot of their stuff, but it's masterfully done. It's beautifully shot by Roger Deakins. They copy it. It looks like it was made in the 1940s. It seems like something who name your favorite directors that made film noirs in that time period. It feels like something they would have made. And this is probably one of Billy Bob's finest performance. I can't think of another actor who could have done this with what they did with it. And it certainly is among films you should watch again of theirs and at least consider it one of their best films, if not your favorite. Like it belongs in mention with all their other masterpieces.
Right.
I do think there's like some comedic relief in this movie. They're very small, subtle moments, like the cops showing up and being like, "Well, Pete's got
they're
the bad
pretty.
news for you."
Yeah. And
There is that dry humor
Yeah.
with them and like how they deliver things, and then the scene where he's waking up and they're like, "Is he awake? Can he hear us?
Yeah.
You're under arrest. You understand? You understand? He got it right, Doc."
Yeah. They're gonna move you to a prison hospital. It'll be okay.
Well, Brandon, thanks so much for coming on the show and bringing insight and things that I didn't even think were in the movie. So I appreciate that.
Oh yeah, of course. Thanks for having me back. I like going on podcasts and making them gay. That's always fun.
Yes.
I think I did it with The Devil's Backbone as well. I was here last time.
I mean, I think that subtext is even more so in there than this one.
Right.
Yeah, but that's great. Do you have anything you want to plug, or just if people want to follow you on social media?
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter at Brandon Stanwyck. I'm also on Letterboxd, I think under the same name. I have a website where I occasionally blog about horror movies and books. Fearsomequeer.net. That's linked in my Twitter as well. So that's what I'm doing. The podcast I hosted, we just ended not too long ago. We're going to come back at some point this summer for a bonus episode. But as far as like regularly recording goes, we sort of put it to bed not too long ago. So that's pretty much what I'm up to now.
Well, I gotta ask, have you seen X yet?
Not yet. No, I've been looking forward to it though. I really like Ty West. I missed it when it was in theaters, but I'm looking forward to it.
It's
I
pretty
haven't-
wild.
Haven't seen it yet. I heard that too. So I'm again, I as well am looking forward to watching that movie.
So once you watch it, you let me know your thoughts on it, because I think you might
Okay.
have some good thoughts on it.
Okay, I've heard great things.
I enjoyed it, and there's a one scene that's bananas, which is only bananas because of our view of sex and people,
Right.
how old you should be when that's being
Right.
shown on film. But I was like full higher star rating for me that it went there, and it was just bananas, even though it shouldn't be
Yeah.
bananas, but it is. Thank you.
Bananas.
But thanks for coming on the show. I really appreciate it and love your insights. And stay cool, because I know you're in Dallas, so it's probably
Yeah.
scorching there too. And
It is 97 degrees according to my watch.
Ooh.
enjoy the
Tomorrow,
rest
it's
of your
supposed to be like
weekend.
99.
Yeah. Thank you. You too.
We'll be back next week. It's probably going to be a doozy for us. We're doing a double feature with possibly the two worst Coen Brother movies ever made: Intolerable Cruelty and The Lady Killers. And we're doing them we're doing them as a double feature. So
I think that's actually a good idea because I was worried for you having two bleak episodes back to back. Just put them together, knock them out.
well, I posted it like, does anyone want to host? And Justin, who's been on the show, was like, I'll do both of them. I'm like, all right, man. Thank you for taking a bullet.
Yeah.
And for our brunch show, Summer of '82, we'll be back to talk Rocky 3. So thank you guys for watching. This will be on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. It'll be on Facebook and Twitter at some point when I get the nerve to post them. But it's on YouTube right now to watch if you want to watch.
Okay, cool.
All right. Everybody have a good day. Thank you for watching, and please stay cool. It's extremely
All right.
hot
Yes.
outside.
Yes. All right, take care.
You too.